Hello and welcome to the Cricket Draft Show, the inaugural episode for the 2024-2025 Big Bash season, which starts on Sunday, the 15th of December, with the Perth Scorchers hosting the Melbourne Stars. My name is Dan Jadzevics, and I am hosting this series. In terms of the game launch, though, just keep your eyes peeled for social media when that date is officially announced. And if you're new around here, consider subscribing to the channel, drop us a like on the video, and we would love to hear your thoughts on who you think is going to win this edition of the Big Bash League. But it's not just me on this series. I'm joined by two co-hosts. We have an analytical brain with us in Dan Weston. Dan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, Dan. Thanks. Yeah, great to be on here.
Thank you. No, thank you for joining us. And could you, for those that don't know, could you just give us a little bit of a background as to well, your background, I suppose. That's the best way to describe it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm a cricket consultant. I work with various teams, particularly in the recruitment and analysis side of things. So I've never played the cricket draft before, though. So this is going to be a new challenge for me, and one that I think I'm really looking forward to, actually.
We've got a good segment coming up in today's video. Today's episode, we are going to put that kind of expertise to the test, and we're going to build a team that we're going to be able to track through the rest of the competition. So no pressure, but I think we're going to do all right. We're also joined by Chris Dixon, who is one of the most successful players in the cricket draft history. Chris, how are you? And can you just give us a little bit of a resume as to your kind of exploits with the cricket draft up to now?
Very well, thanks, Dan. Yes, so I started playing the games when they launched in 2021 over various different competitions and have played pretty much every one since, and was lucky enough to win the IPL in 2022, the last time that was run. So that was quite fun, and I love the stats and analytical side of it. So that's great fun for me, and I also work as a cricket analyst myself. So yeah, it's right up my street playing these great games that they're running.
So I think we are well covered. We've got analytical experts who's a complete novice. We've got a game expert who also has an analytical brain on, and then there's me sat somewhere in the middle that if I creep into the top 1,000 players in any of the games, I feel like I've had a massive success. There are plenty of English players and even a coach in this edition of the Big Bash, and I'm going to run through exactly who is where and who you need to look out for because, well, unfortunately, Australians, there are a lot of English players that play the cricket draft. So we're going to start with the Adelaide strikers. We're going alphabetical order. We've, of course, got Jamie Overton and Ollie Pope, both from Surrey, representing the team in Adelaide. Brisbane Heat have re-signed Paul Walter from Essex. They've also signed Sussex's Tom Alsop. The Hobart Hurricanes have got England's stalwart white ball fast bowler in Chris Jordan. The Melbourne Renegades, the new kid, the cab off the rank, Jacob Bethel is with the Renegades, with Laurie Evans as well, who I think kind of goes under the radar in a few of these T20 competitions. Melbourne Stars, I mean, if you like knots, these are probably the team for you. Not only do they have Tom Curran, they've got Ben Duckett, they've got Joe Clark, and if you're a big fan of coaches, Peter Moores is there as well. Perth Scorchers go over on the other side, one of the most successful teams in the competition. They have got Keaton Jennings and Matthew Hurst, so a bit of a Lancashire influx over on that coast in Australia. Sydney Sixers, Jaffa Chauhan from Yorkshire and James Vince, the ever-present. I mean, that guy seems to score buckets of runs in the Big Bash. And the Sydney Thunder have managed to pinch Sam Billings from the Brisbane Heat, which I think is a great signing. Chris, I've listed through all of those players. I think I've got them right, and I think I've got them in the right places as well. So pat on the back for me. Which of those players are you looking at with your game-winning mentality, thinking, this is the guy I'm picking in my team?
So I had a bit of umming and ahhing over this one. Normally I'm looking for the all-rounder slots because that's, you've got two options with bat and with ball to contribute towards the points, and they're often where maybe your captain picks are going to go. So I was looking at who's going to be basically the best English all-rounder that's in the game. And ultimately I went for Tom Curran. He's played in the competition before, generally batting relatively up the order, is probably going to bat in the top six, has done previously for the Sydney Sixers, and does well with the ball, bowls at the death quite a lot, so he's going to get wickets there. And I was just thinking, that's probably the position that's going to utilise best and get the best points there. Jamie Overton was another one I was potentially looking at, kind of similar kind of role, probably going to bat again relatively high up for Adelaide, especially considering they're missing Head and Carey in the test squad. Bowls, but maybe not as much of a role with the ball early on if he's still a bit injured. So that's kind of what veered me towards Tom Curran in the end there. His numbers are actually outstanding in the last kind of 18 months in T20 cricket. Tom Curran's numbers have actually improved a lot with bat and ball, so that's kind of swayed me to go with him there.
It feels like he's had a real kind of resurgence in that career, hasn't it, over the last couple of months, as you say, which has been really exciting. Whether we see him again in an England show or not, I don't know, but okay, I think it's a really strong pick. How about you, Dan? Where are you looking? Or was Tom Curran on your shopping list as well?
Well, over the last few days, we've set up a WhatsApp group with us in it, chatting about potential picks, and Chris got in front of me first with the Tom Curran pick, so I'll have to bow down to that. He would definitely have been my first choice, and just echoing what Chris said really about his improvement, particularly with the bat. I think he's now a genuine top 6 batting option, which going alongside with his bowling match involvement, 3-4 overs and bowling death overs most games as well, puts him in line, I think, to be a really prolific point scorer in this format. The other player that I really got a close eye on actually is Chris Jordan from the English playing group, because he will also pick up some points from fielding as well. Again, bowled at 4 over quota, and his batting has taken a dramatic shift upwards in this last year, particularly against pace bowling. So for me, again, someone who can contribute for points in all 3 facets of the game. Someone who I think will play a prominent role for his franchise as well. So I think Chris Jordan is a solid choice too.
I think we're learning quite quick here that the experts want players that do a bit of everything in this world of fantasy cricket. I've gone with the trendy pick. I've gone for Jacob Bethel. I know he's off in New Zealand, isn't he, with that Test squad, and whether he does or doesn't get involved there or not, I don't know. But something tells me that he might just get released a little bit early to come back for the Big Bash if he isn't going to get out there on the field in New Zealand. If he does stay, I think he misses 2 games because I think the Renegades play twice. I think they might play on the 19th, which is the day after the final Test against New Zealand finishes. So I think that turnaround could be a little bit too tight for him. But he's in good form. He scored 350s against the West Indies in their recent white ball tour over there. I think, 360 odd runs in the Blast last summer, striking at over 150, including that 15 ball half century against Northampton Edgbaston. England are really, really investing in stocks in Jacob Bethel, and I kind of feel like, well, I might be a bit of a sheep, but I feel like I'm going to put some of my cash in Jacob Bethel coin as well for the Big Bash. What do you think about Bethel as an option?
From my perspective, obviously, I've worked with Jacob for a couple of years at Birmingham Phoenix, and yeah, he's a great kid as well. I think it's really important to say that as someone who really wants to learn and get better, and someone who I really enjoy working with. He is arguably the best fielder in England as well. So for anyone who's considering that as a viable point scoring mechanism, I think that he'll be definitely in the thick of things with terms of run outs and catches as well. So there's that scope. Obviously, bowl some left arm spin as well, and spinners can tend to go quite well in the Big Bash. So he could definitely be someone to keep an eye on, especially when he's available.
Yeah, I agree. A great pick there. His numbers have been very good over the last year and a half, both in 100 and in the Blast, and now for England. And also he offers that option from the ball as well. Be interesting to see actually how much he does bowl in the Big Bash. He's not necessarily a frontline bowling option, so it'd be interesting to see how he is utilised. But of course he's would offer that option with the ball as well, so potentially a chance for extra points there.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for just backing up my pick, because I was a little bit nervous going into this with the experts with me on screen. So, yeah, there are 3 picks. Again, we'd love to hear from you as to who you think is going to have the biggest impact from an English perspective in the Big Bash. An opportunity now just to drop us a little comment, and we will go back. We'll go back to every comment on this episode. Why not? We'll get involved. We might critique. We might join you. You never know. You never know. But next up, we are going to ask Dan Weston as to what the analyst says, or what his data says is going to be the best team available in the Big Bash. The analyst, Dan Weston. I'd like to know, with all of your spreadsheets and calculators and everything else that you've got going on, what actually is the best team available in the Big Bash? I know we haven't got prices yet, but who would be the best 11 that you could come up with from this pool of Big Bash players? And then after you've picked that team, I'm going to throw it over to Chris, obviously the game-winning expert. You don't just win the IPL by chance. Just go, is Dan's team actually any good, Chris? Or would you go completely left field?
Right. Okay. So I obviously, as I said earlier in this episode, I'd never actually played the cricket draft before, and so I had no option really but to build a model which worked out the expected performance points per game for each player, and then kind of collate a team from that. Now, obviously, we don't know the prices for each player, and we don't know necessarily about availability for a lot of players. So I've gone for a team that I think should have pretty consistent availability. Now, when we're comparing this later on in the tournament, I think it's also important to say that I'm not going to have the luxury of making transfers that everyone else has as well.
Just
So
get the caveats in now.
yeah, definitely getting those pieces in early. So I want to make sure that I've got players who are consistently available, have really high match involvement, which was something that clearly stood out to me when I was modelling the players, that in terms of who can contribute with at least 2 of the 3 point scoring areas, batting, bowling, fielding, and basically, yeah, just that will hopefully build some consistency as well, because there's going to be players contributing everywhere in a team, rather than looking to sort of 1 or 2 star players to get me through certain game weeks. So, without further ado, I went for this squad, which I think should fit into a decent pricing mechanism, hopefully. I went for 2 very, very aggressive openers in Jake Fraser-McGurk and Josh Brown. I think Brown could be a really interesting pick, having moved over to Melbourne Renegades to join Jake Fraser-McGurk, who's obviously had a lot of success in the last year or 2. I think both the players have got high scope to get strike rate bonus points. They are 6 hitters as well, again, which aligns to the dynamics of the game in terms of specific areas where you can score points. They're both playing for the same team. They're either going to be 100 for 0 off the power play or 0 for 2 off the first over. So there's a lot of variance involved with that, but hopefully at least one of them will fire more often than not. So then, because of that sort of volatility, I went for a number 3 who I expect to have a really high match enrollment in terms of balls faced and run production. Not necessarily for a strike rate, but some consistent output, and that's Daniel Hughes, who had a great summer at Sussex, who scored a really high volume of runs and has done that consistently for years in the Big Bash as well. So he's my 3rd batting choice out of the minimum 3 that I was allowed to choose in my squad as a starting point. At number 4, I picked a wicketkeeper. I think probably a bit of an under the radar option, considering he was injured last season. But he has a really high dismissals per match average, and scores quick runs as well. And that's Sam Harper of the Melbourne Stars. So I think that he'll fit in nicely with the price mechanism, and how I've got to try and collate that 15-player squad for 100 million. And I think that's exactly what he can bring to my side. And allow me to invest a little bit more money in some of my all-rounders, which are probably no surprise. How anyone who's listened to this so far will know that I want to maximise my all-rounders. Without further ado, 5, Tom Curran, we've already spoken about at length. Absolute no-brainer pick for me, given the fact that he's going to probably have the highest or one of the highest match involvements of any player in the whole tournament if he's fully fit. He looks like he's got a clear schedule. I've checked availability for all of the overseas players, and it looks like he's going to be pretty free and have no other commitments. So that's a really good positive for him. 6 is Sydney Thunder's Chris Green, who I like because 1, he'll bowl 4 overs. 2, he has shown a real improvement in his power hitting in the last year, and that should hopefully get some benefits from 6 hitting and strike rate bonuses. And he should bat relatively high up the order. I expect him to maybe bat 6 at a push, maybe 7. So should get to face a decent amount of balls with the bat as well. So I think he's a really, really solid choice, someone who can contribute with bat and ball, and again a very good fielder as well. 7, another very good fielder we've already mentioned, Chris Jordan, who is my English pick for the reasons that we've already discussed. And 8, the last all-rounder, again, we perhaps looking with a nod to fitting into that pricing mechanism. Tom Rogers, the Melbourne Renegades all-rounder, who was at Kent recently in the T20 Blast. Now, I have to admit, when he was played for the Renegades in the Big Bash, he's not really shown that much in terms of his power hitting, but I think he's taken that to another level recently, and certainly showed that he can, to use a cliched phrase that we often hear in the commentary in the Big Bash, he can hit a long ball. So I think that there's definite point scoring options for him. Maybe it's like a 7 or an 8, and then bowling his 4 overs as a frontline bowler as well. So that's my all-rounders. Moving through into the bowlers, I managed to game the system a little bit. I'm very pleased to find a couple of bowlers who can still contribute points with the bat as well. The first one being Michael Neser, who I think has been a consistently strong output player for the Brisbane Heat. Will bowl 4 overs, bat maybe 8, but his batting has shown a real improvement in the last year or two. If we're looking at his Big Bash numbers last season, he struck 88 runs at 144 strike rate. So there's definite scope for 6 hitting points and strike rate bonuses. And also in the Blast over the last couple of years, he's striking at almost 140 as well. So there's definite scope for him to score some points in different ways. And I think that's the same as well for Usama Mir at Melbourne Stars as well, who qualifies as a bowler, but is certainly a big hitter. I've actually personally been on the end of my team has been on the end of his hitting last year at Old Trafford, so I know he can definitely clear the ropes. And again, I mentioned earlier, I expect spinners to go pretty well. Obviously, spinners tend to go pretty well in the Big Bash and match up well with a lot of the local batters. So I'm expecting good things from Usama Mir, who's again at Melbourne Stars after he was there before as well. And finally, another spinner who I've worked with before actually as well is a player who I think could be a really, really nice value pick in this tournament, and that's Tanveer Sangha, a player who maybe has had some injury problems recently, so might fly under the radar for a few owners, but someone who I know has a huge amount of talent, and my model predicts him to have a very, very high output, higher than a lot of players who I think will probably be higher priced than him. So for me, that he was my final pick of my starting 11. Now, I had to economize after that because obviously we know that we got price constraints, and I picked some young players on the bench who hopefully could break into their Big Bash teams this year, and players who have really high potential and high ceilings who might well surprise people at I think probably will be quite a low price point. Callum Vidler from Brisbane Heat is an Australian under-19 star who did really well in the World Cup a year or two back. And I expect him to now get more game time at Heat this year compared to previous years. And another player who people rate really, really highly is his fellow under-19 pacer, Marley Beardman, who's at Perth Scorchers. Now, I think it's going to be tougher for him to break into the Scorchers team because Scorchers have just got such a stacked lineup in this tournament. They're traditionally one of the favourites for winning the tournament. So I think maybe game time might be quite tough for him to come by, but if he does well and has a breakthrough early in the tournament, maybe that's a really nice value pick. Then another Scorchers player. I had to dig deep for this one, I'm not going to lie. I went through the data for the top end T20 tournament in Darwin that was played in August, and I'm really interested in Matthew Sports, who has a Canadian background. I think he might have actually played for the national team, but I think he'll count as a domestic player in a Big Bash. He looked like he can score runs at a quick lick from that tournament, and also took a wicket a game on average as well, bowling in every match. 4 Perth Scorchers in that tournament as well. So I think he could be a nice value choice at a low price point. And then final player who's never really made much of an impact in T20, but has done pretty well in red ball cricket before, and I think in the right role might still have an impact in the Big Bash, and that's Mitch Perry at Sydney Sixers, who can also bat a little bit as well. So again, we're seeing that there's a nod to this multiple point scoring element in different areas of cricket, and I think that's probably a big theme, recurring theme for my squad.
I love it. if somebody offered me a greasy bucket of chicken to put on my head and turn off at the SCG, I would very much pay to go and sit in the stands and watch this team. But the big question, Chris, is how does Dan's team line up with the logic that you would have applied to your own team?
Yeah, no, I like it. Sounds like a very, very good, strong team there. That explosive opening partnership is certainly going to be interesting to see how it plays off, both playing in the same team. And, like you said, it could be 100 without loss or lose 2 early wickets there. I mean, Fraser McGurk especially, he's not going to hold back. He's going to go pretty much from ball one at many points and try and smash it into the stands as he does, and with his strong base. So that'll be interesting there. And I really like the Dan Hughes pick, who, if you look on the surface at his overall career T20 stats, are his average is good, but his strike rate is, pretty mediocre. But if you look at the blast this summer for Sussex, the numbers he accumulated there, and his actual strike rate was way up. So if he can kind of replicate that in the Bash this year, that could be, he could be a really good pick, especially as his price point may not completely reflect the fact he's had such a good summer, because they're looking at, his overall career numbers. So that could be kind of when you look surface level at the stats, you think, okay, maybe this player's not so good. But if you kind of look just deeper and look at the recent form, that could be a really good pick there, Dan Hughes. And then kind of looking into the all-rounder slots, or the that's of Tom Curran, Green, Jordan, and Nisa. They're all strong picks, and some of these could even potentially fit into the bowler category. So if you're getting some of these that maybe fit into a bowler category, like Jordan has often been in the bowler category in previous years. Chris Green, if they come up as a bowler in the game when things are released, we don't know, he's not confirmed yet, but that could be extra value there, because basically you're filling a bowling slot with someone that's going to have a larger batting role, like with Osama Mir, who is almost likely to be a bowler, but does offer options with the bat, and then that's maximising your point output there. And then the bench, I certainly like the sound of those players. You're kind of looking for players that are, not necessarily the big names, but the cheaper that may get a game. So finding those names, certainly if they are starting regularly, they're going to be great picks, because they're offering you that rotation option week by week as you're looking into the who's got double game weeks. Then you might bring one of them in for someone that's got a single game week. That's when the tactical side starts to come in, and it's much better having players on the bench that are playing regularly, because if they're not, then you're having to basically use your transfers every week to make sure you've got a team that's going to be playing. And Tanvir Sangha, I think that's a great pick. His numbers in T20 cricket are very good as well. And pick one that I was potentially thinking maybe a good option is Jaffa Chauhan. Not necessarily the biggest name at this stage, but his numbers are actually very good. So he may be an option when the prices are released that is a slightly cheaper option, but has actually good numbers. That could be kind of a value pick there to add to that team. But all in all, it's a good team, and we'll see if it fits into the budget and how well it does.
Right, the big picks. Chris, we're going to come to you first. This one, no English bias whatsoever, giving you the full range of the Big Bash to go and pick one player that you would bet your house on in the Cricket Draft Fantasy League to have a good season.
So again, it's no surprise that I'm looking for that all-rounder slot to utilise here, and for that pick. And again, it was one that took a bit of thought. Wasn't straightforward. There's a few in my mind, but in the end, I went for Glenn Maxwell. Season in, season out, he's great option for the Melbourne Stars. Very aggressive bat, so you're looking for those strike rate bonuses that he's going to offer if he gets in. And bowls spin as well. Not a frontline option, so it wasn't completely straightforward. Where he's not going to bowl 4 overs every game, but he will be utilised if there's 2 left-handers in. On some of the grounds with the bigger straight boundaries, a short square, they may be utilised a bit more. And he's also a good fielder, so he's going to get some catching points as well, potentially with where he's fielding. And so that was kind of why I went for him. Another option I was maybe thinking of someone like a Marcus Stoinis, who's a similar role, same team, is going to bowl. His bowling numbers are actually quite good in the last few years. Marcus Stoinis' bowling has actually improved in T20 cricket quite a lot. Batting numbers are great as well. Average around the 30 mark, strike rate above 140. So he's, another option for that potential all-rounder slot. So they're the kind of 2 that I was looking at, and I went for Glenn Maxwell in the end.
It's a great choice. Dan?
Yeah, so I think those 2 are great picks as well. Some really good reasoning. I think it's complete solid rationale. I think when we're looking at, say, the non-English key players, we're going to have to look at availability sometimes. So, for example, players like Steve Smith and Travis Head have got high model output. I mean, Smith scored last 2 seasons, he scored 400 runs in 7 games at a strike rate of around 170, which is off the charts. But or whether they're going to be available very much with the Border Gavaskar Trophy against India right now being played is certainly a massive debate. The other players, I mean, I mentioned obviously the guys like Chris Green, Michael Neser, guys who are probably quite consistent point scorers in this competition. One other player that I think is worth mentioning is Matt Short. I didn't quite manage to get him in my team, but look, this is a player who I think will score runs. He'll get 6 hitting bonuses. He'll get strike rate bonuses. He'll also be able to contribute with his off spin as well, maybe 2 overs, 3 overs a game, more against left-handed opposition. So that there's scope for him to get a lot of points, and he also modelled around 3 points higher than the average player in terms of fielding contributions as well. So I think that there's scope for him to be a really prolific point scorer in this tournament.
Some good picks. I'm hopeful that David Warner's going to enjoy his time away from the microphone slightly more than behind it. So I believe he's been dubbed as captain for the Sydney Thunder, which is a big pick. He's only ever played 11 Big Bash games in his career so far, but he has scored 100, but it was way back in 2011, 2012. We know how good he is of a T20 cricketer. I think he scored over 12,000 T20 runs in his career. I kind of feel like where he might or might not have retired from international cricket, and undoubtedly, or what we've seen from the scorecard over in Australia this morning anyways, there could be a bit of scrutiny for this Australian kind of top 4. I don't necessarily think that kind of question of is David Warner going to come back, isn't he going to come back, and I just feel like he likes it. I feel like he enjoys the attention, and I feel like that's going to really kind of spur him on if he needs any motivation to go out there and do well. I'm actually, strange as it sounds from an Englishman, actually quite excited to watch David Warner play cricket. Silence. I've stunned you both into silence. That's how bad of a pick this is. You have absolutely nothing left to throw back at me about David Warner. So it's either brilliant or it's awful.
I'm saying nothing.
There we go. We'll go awful. We'll go awful. Look, chaps, thank you so much for joining on this very first episode. If you have enjoyed it, if you can drop us a like on the video, get subscribed, because there will be another episode coming very soon once we've got the game up and running and we can pick our teams. But yeah, until then, thank you very much.